我们都知道说故事的重要性，也知道它是一个非常重要的说服工具，但到底要怎么样说才能让人家印象深刻、深入人心呢？在职场上到底要如何运用呢？那我们今天邀请到了一位说故事的专家，来教大家非常实用的技巧。Stay tuned to today's episode.Hello， 欢迎来到 Executive Plus 主管双语沟通力的 Podcast。我们希望带给大家最实用的沟通工具，包括了成功人士对全球市场的分享、职场英语的技能、跨文化沟通技巧与其他能帮助您成为出色领导者的工具。Hi, I'm Sherry, founder of Executive Plus. As a language trainer and certified coach, I've trained hundreds of managers from Fortune 500 companies such as Dior, Google, Deloitte, and Yahoo.And
I'm Nick, Director of Communication Strategy at Presentality. I've helped startups raise millions of US dollars in funding and train the executives of publicly listed companies to present on the global stage.
Welcome to the Executive Plus podcast,
where you can take your communication and language skills from good to great. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Executive Plus podcast, episode 55. Today, we're here with my business partner, Andrew, who, among his many accolades and jobs such as presidential speechwriter, executive assistant to Nobel laureates, he also used to travel around Taiwan doing storytelling workshops. So today, on World Storytelling Day, we want to sit him down and pick his brain about the importance of storytelling. So welcome, Andrew. Thank you for joining us.
It's good to be here.
Sounds so excited.
Very exciting.
Good to be here.
It's right after lunch. So, usually it's food coma.
Yeah, that's true.
And you're like, I don't want to work this afternoon. And by the way, the weather's really nice outside.
It is. So we're going to tell some quick stories and then attempt to go enjoy the nice weather. But you're someone who has spent a lot of time thinking about storytelling in presentation, in speech, or even in our own workshops. A lot of the storytelling ideas come from you, also working with Zona on like storytelling curves, and this is something you guys really impress upon. So for you, why do you feel storytelling is so important in speech and presentation?
I think as I went along, I had different answers to this. Like in the beginning, it's this general idea that everybody loves story. Like from the earliest times, when Homo sapiens became Homo sapiens, I guess. I don't know. I'm not a history person. I got like a D or an F in my history class, but everybody says, well, since people started gathering around bonfires, they told stories to each other. Like, oh man, you wouldn't believe this saber-toothed tiger that I ran into, right? I nearly lost my life. So hint, hint, don't go to that area. So people have been telling stories for a long time. But then it's also this observation, right? I think all of us have sat in class and fallen asleep when the teacher is talking about something very theoretical, very conceptual, or they're just sharing something general. It just doesn't get your attention. But then when they start talking about the stories that they went through, like I had this professor in graduate school, and he would just tell these stories about him, like being in Vietnam and because it was a military strategy class, and talking about him meeting Vietnamese generals, talking to him about the Vietnam War. And that's when he had our attention. And so you just start noticing these things, right? And you're like, stories do work for a reason.
所以你刚刚有讲到说，故事好像有两种，一种是真的能够传达它的知识那种精髓，另外一种是你听了想睡着的。So 觉得这两种不同的所谓故事好了，你觉得最大的不同点是在哪里？
我刚刚讲那个反而比较是就没有讲故事的时候，只是在讲理论啊。
Okay.
Just the theory, right? Or a concept. 就比较难抓到大家的注意力。但他真的开始分享实际的事迹，发生什么事情的时候， 然后他就可以得到你的注意力，至少得到一下。那你刚刚讲到确实有不同种的故事，那有一些故事我们都很讨厌，像你在跟家人团圆的时候然后老一辈的都要跟你讲说他们做过什么事迹啊，他如果不会讲的话真的就很无聊，因为他变成一种你知道我当年我隔壁有个诺贝尔奖得主，然后我的另外一个邻居是个立法委员，然后他说你真的很棒，然后你真的很厉害变成开始流水账对不对？那个故事没有高低起伏通常最好玩的是有 surprise， 还是有你意想不到的转折点发生然后你会想要知道下一个是什么当有个人跟我们讲 it's almost like a shopping list, right? First I got the cucumber, second I got the egg, and third I saw a gum, and oh wow, that's really cheap.
And this person told me that, and that person told me that.
Yeah, exactly. And you're like, where is this story going? Right? Yeah. So definitely different types of stories. Yeah.
But I also think that you've talked about this before. There's a lot of misconceptions that people assume like, I don't have a story to tell because I don't have these amazing experiences or I meet these really great people. But one thing that I've seen you do in workshops or working is that everyone has a story.
Yeah.
And it's just a matter of how you choose the moments or you choose the narrative to tell a story. But that's like everyone in their life has some kind of story.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if you look at some of the best writers and even some of the best comedians, if you go online and you watch like stand-up comedy, some of the really good ones, they're able to turn seemingly mundane, everyday little details, like moments that we would forget, and turn those into stories. Like it happens all the time.
Yeah.
But for most of us, we forget these stories, right? We forget these little moments. Like something happens to you and you don't think about, oh my God, wait, how ridiculous was that living in modern society, this kind of stuff would happen to me.
所以你一直说那个讲故事的那个 moment 其实是非常重要的，对不对？
没错。没错，然后捕捉到，我觉得是怎么捕捉到这些 moments。就像我跟人家讲，这算是一种那种迷你的故事啊。就像我跟人家讲说什么你知道吗？我去买便当，然后那个老板娘，因为老板娘女儿啊还蛮漂亮的，这我还单身的时候啦，我现在结婚了，所以不要让妹妹听到这个。然后那女儿还蛮漂亮，然后那老板娘就跟我说：“我女儿啊，她说你很可爱。”然后我心里就很高兴。但老板娘下一个就补一个白白圆圆的。我想说妈的。所以那个就有一个高低起伏，对不对？然后但是大部分的人，你顶多你跟同事或朋友分享一次以后你就忘掉它了。那其实你在演讲的时候，这就是一种你还可以把它拿出来用，说大家怎么那么不会讲话，或是什么有什么其他的 message 是你要给人家。那这个一个小故事在15秒20秒内完成的，你就可以拿出来用。但是大部分的人过去了就过去了，他不会捕捉到这些东西。所以 yeah, Nick, I think you're right. Like everybody has these stories, right? I'm sure Taiwanese people have offended you on multiple occasions, and these could always be like very good intercultural stories. I'm sure Sherry has done that to you a bunch of times.
All the time.
What did I do?
Well, that's a longer episode talking about all the bullying. But yeah, you get into these situations where a lot of times the fun stories come from the mundane thing. So especially in a cross-cultural environment, and explaining like what the difference, like someone new comes to Taiwan and something will happen to them and they'll be really frustrated, and I'll just find a story to explain. Like, for example, Taiwanese are very straightforward when talking about weight. So a lot of times foreigners will be like, I can't believe they said that to me, and be like, it's fine. Every day. Last week, here's the most interesting way that someone phrased my weight gain.
Right.
That you've been, eating very well, or you have been looking very wealthy.
Wealthy, right.
Yeah.
所以其实故事真的是不用 不用像我们所讲的那种 fairy tale 那样子，有非常多不同的 character 啊，然后要一个英雄要怎么样，所以其实可以很平常的，就像你刚刚讲的15 to 20 seconds 就可以，这个也算是一个小故事 right？
是啊，我觉得它确实是一个小故事，发生的事情，然后你把重点把它放在发生了什么事，然后它有个高低起伏，这个有可能是实际事件的高低起伏，或是你内心的高低起伏，对不对？就像那老板娘跟我讲了一下，我高兴了，然后她接下来那一句以后就让我心情掉到谷底了，然后我就再也没有去那边买过便当。没有啦，我有回去。
OK， 所以你刚刚讲那个捕捉到那个 moment, capturing the moments，how do we do that actually？
我自己的方式啊，可能因为每一个人都有不同的 note taking 的方式嘛，对。那我自己的方式，但这也是因为我们是演讲沟通的教练，所以所以我用的方式是我把它捕捉在 Evernote 上面。
就是你想到或者发生你就记下来。
对啊，我就把它记下来。
OK，
我就可能或者甚至在捷运上面啊，我就用我的手机啊，然后进去那个 app， 然后就直接把它打进来，打进去花几秒钟而已。
So creating a habit, actually documenting it when it happens. Okay.
Yeah, I also find that like there are certain triggers that will usually cause a story to come into your mind. So one activity that I used to do with people is actually have them find a song that reminds them of a certain time of their life. Like, for example, think of a song that like, it's not your favorite song, but it's like if you hear that song, it takes you back to high school. And usually if you can create that trigger in someone's mind, the stories will start to come out, even if they're pretty basic.
That's pretty cool.
But you've worked quite a bit with storytelling in a professional communication sense. What would you say, is there a big difference between telling personal stories, say, with your family around a dinner table versus taking storytelling into a professional setting? Whether it's VC pitching or whether it's, sharing your ideas.
Yeah, 我觉得有一个大的不同。这个其实我不常讲，但是我觉得这还蛮好玩的。就 professional 的 storytelling, it has a different purpose. Typically, when you're telling your boss or your investor or your partners about a failed experience or experiment, something that failed, they expect you to have a solution for it. So basically that story needs to have, okay, this happened, and then it needs to have it has a downhill, right? Because you failed or something bad happened, but you can't just stop there. You need to bring it back up so that they see hope of fixing the situation, and that they want to see that you're capable of fixing the situation. So it needs to have, right? If you imagine the curve, maybe we can put this in the show notes or something. I can give you something. But like the curve, you imagine it goes down and then it has to come back up. But when you're in a social situation or in a family situation, that curve doesn't always have to come up because your purpose may be to make people laugh. And stories of failure or stories of embarrassment, just like that thing that happened to me at the biandang place, right? It doesn't have to come back up. It can just be like, wow, that was shit. Right? People will laugh.
Just let it dangle.
Exactly. So you can just end in embarrassment and let the people around you comfort you or give you a bright side, basically. Like, oh, hey, look on the bright side. So different stories, different purpose. But workplace, when you're telling a story, the curve should probably come back up. You need to let them see a hope. Unless one situation I've seen, 就在商业的场合啊，通常是这样，你要给他们看到希望 right? 可是很好玩的是 political stories 或者是 social movement 的 story， 你如果去看那些真正非常非常 moving 的那些东西呢，常常没有，常常是有一群人他们生活中其实是有希望的，但是一个政府来或是外来的一个势力来，然后把他们打到谷底，很惨，然后就停在那边。为什么？因为他们要 fundraise，他们是要号召人家来把这个 story 抬起来。
对，
所以他等于是跟你讲说，要靠你的力量，这个 story 才会有一个好的 ending。
OK， 了解。
我发现这一点的时候是看美国的一些那种 social movement 啊，或者是帮原住民的那种 fundraising 的 video， 注意到的。真的他停在那个最惨的那个点的时候，他的用意到底是什么？然后我才恍然大悟说，因为是要我们这些人看到的人被打动来捐钱，
对，
一起把这个故事往好的地方带。
That's very interesting. 所以有不同的目的性，你的那个讲故事的那种方式是完全不一样的。
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which kind of goes, maybe not against, but it's contradictory to what most people think. Like a storytelling has to have that like ending either high, whether it's a fairy tale type story, or it's like there's got to be a conclusion. But there's actually a lot of ways or methods to end a story on not a conclusion as a way to get your audience to do something, right?
Exactly. It's like leaving a blank space for your audience to fill in.
那如果比如说好了，我们是在内部好了，跟老板开会，跟老板只是报告最简单的，很多在 corporate 的嘛，他们大概每个礼拜每隔几个礼拜就报告数字好了，这种是非常无聊的会议，非常 mundane。你还是可以讲故事吗？像这样子会议，这样子 presentation 好了。
我相信你们都有不同的经验啊。但我自己的经验是真的要看老板是谁。像有些老板他根本不想要你跟他讲故事，你就把数字，像如果是你的销售的 number，你就把它放上去就好了，你不要在旁边啰嗦，因为他会觉得说我看数字我最清楚。那其他老板就会说，那你放那么多数字上去干嘛？你要讲一下这个数字背后到底发生什么事啊？他就可以让你来给这个数字一个 narrative。
So know your boss.
对 know your boss. Yeah, some people just like stories,
yeah,
and some
true.
people like you to shut the hell up.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but it also comes back to I think you're talking about what's the point? Like,
right.
If I'm just giving you information about a decision that you will need to make, then perhaps just the basic facts are what you want. But if it's like you said, if it's a failure and your boss wants to know where did this come from, and basically it's like, did you learn a lesson? Then maybe telling it as a story will help them understand, like, did you learn something out of this?
Right, yeah. But I think one general rule is that I have basically never ever met a boss, a leader who likes long-winded stories. Nobody likes it. So if you do decide to tell a story, make it short. I would say in my experience, about like 2 or 3 minutes.
Okay.
Max. Unless you're an amazing storyteller, which I think most of us are not, and you can just keep throwing out stuff that get people really hooked and wanting to know more. In which case you will know, because they will ask you, hey, what exactly happened here? And then what happened next? And so, but otherwise, yeah, keep this story to 2 to 3 minutes.
But sometimes that's all you really need. Like there's been cases where we talked about a VC decided to make an investment based on a just really basic story.
Yeah.
But it was a really powerful story.
So 不知道 Andrew 有没有办法给我们听众一些基本的 example， 比如说你刚刚讲到 story curve 这个曲线图，应该有蛮多不一样的，因为你刚刚讲到嘛，不同的讲故事的方式，有没有一些你平常觉得大部分人都可以用到的一种 story curve？
有啊，当然最基本的 story curve 当然就是你就是过你自己的日常生活嘛，然后有一个挑战发生，那个很屌，就是你车子被拖了，然后你找不到它在哪里，然后接下来你怎么样好像冒险一样去把你的车子找回来，然后可能或是你被警察开单，然后你要怎么说服他说不但不要酒测，好了，我不要讲这个太那个然后还说服他不要开单，像这个就是最基本的一个，我们大家耳熟能详，大家都很喜欢的电影都是走这个架构嘛。
Okay.
Like the hero's journey.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah, you're a hero, and then something happens to you, and then you try to solve that challenge. And it's a series of adventures and trying. Yeah. So that's one. Another one I think is really good for everyday use, especially for social situations, is the one that I talked about. You get into a situation. It could be a kind of a shady situation or a dicey one, 就有点紧张的情势，或者是有点丢脸的，然后就在那边结束。因为你的目的是要让大家笑，要给大家一点娱乐。你知道你的痛苦说实在就是别人的娱乐。那我不是在开玩笑的啊，是因为我们你看我们共事啊，或者做朋友，对不对？我们的娱乐都是建筑在互相的痛苦上嘛，对不对？超好笑的。
是 self-deprecating humor，
没错没错。你看你同事在被老板电爆的时候，心里不是很爽吗？对。
Nick is saying yes, nodding.
Yeah, so 那是另外一种曲线啊。就讲一个 situation， 然后就停在最惨的那一刻。
所以通常如果是做简报的时候，你的那个故事通常都是 Do we actually tell the story right in the beginning？ 是一刚开始就要讲这个故事吗？
不一定，
不一定。OK。
有时候我们会帮客户或者是那种公司啊，帮他们用的是怎么样？是他的故事会分成2半。你会把故事切成2半。它如果是你要讲的东西的一个主要的故事啊，你可能因为我们刚讲的故事是 OK， 你是有一个 hero 嘛，然后他碰到一个挑战，对不对？然后就很惨很惨，他有后果，他被打得很惨，还是被攻击还是什么的。然后后面他会再爬起来，因为他找到爬起来的那个决心啊，或者是有人帮他，或者那种反败为胜的关键。你可以把很惨的那一段放在前面，用那个来勾起大家的兴趣，然后中间开始分析说，碰到这种状况的时候，我们大家通常应该怎么做？有几种，有哪一些方法？你是去改策略，还是你去找元首，还是你去找什么？然后分析完以后呢，你在后面再 reveal 那个故事后来发生什么事，让它来当个结尾，那是一种方式。Yeah.
So early on, you're basically creating a mystery that's keeping someone hooked. It's like when TV shows end on cliffhangers, right? Like you just end at a moment and someone goes like, I want to know what's going on.
Yeah.
So they listen to everything else so you can get to that point. Right?
Yeah, exactly. And so recently I was training a bunch of doctors on their medical presentations and like talking about a new treatment course. And one of them did so well. I think it turned out to be the most popular presentation. His entire presentation was a story. He finished it in about 10 minutes. And what he did was he said, okay, I had this, I will always remember this grandmother and her son pushed her into my clinic in a wheelchair. And her situation was this. And so my diagnosis was this. Now, and then he asked all the doctors present, what would you do?
No.
Would you choose treatment A or B or C or D? And after a bit of like discussion, and he said, okay, I ultimately chose treatment B. And here's what happened next. And it went well until like the second month, something happened. And I had to decide what to do. Do I abandon treatment or do I continue with it? What would you do? And he turned the question back to the audience, and then they debated like what to do, why they would make such a judgment. And then he revealed it. He said, ultimately, I decided to abandon treatment because it was just too dangerous. And then comes the twist. So really good stories sometimes have a twist. He's like, but the strangest thing is what happened next. She was cured, even though she never finished the treatment.
鸡皮疙瘩会起来。
Yeah, and then he asked, like, what do you think happened? Why was she cured? And so they had a discussion around that.
Yeah.
And then just ended on, and then people just kept talking about it.
Yeah. 就是让每一个人都能够参与这个故事的
对，
感觉。
没错，对。
Wow.
几乎有点想象你在看一个电视剧啊，或者什么的时候，然后在 in the middle of it 突然 大家说你会怎么做？And I didn't tell him to do that.
But he found that really powerful kind of story hook. And also almost like choose your own adventure style stories, turn it around.
好，所以刚刚 Andrew 讲到了，就是第一个什么是好的说故事方法，跟那种非常 long boring speech。那第二个就是有哪些不同的一些 story curves。那最后呢 ，Andrew 有讲到说，在这种什么时候该说，也就是利用讲故事，让你的简报或者你的演讲更有趣。So I guess one last question for Andrew. Do you have any additional easy takeaway for the audience? You know, if this is like they're still nervous about giving presentation, 他们还是对于上台要做简报还是很紧张，有没有一个很简单的方式能够让他们利用这种 storytelling， 然后在他们的简报当中？
你说用 storytelling 可能让他们去比较不要那么紧张，
不要那么紧张，或者是应该说比较有说服力啦。
OK。其实我给人家有关紧张的那种建议啊，比较怪一点。
OK，
我觉得你就紧张吧。
有些人是说 ，When you're nervous, you tell yourself, "I'm excited."
对 ，redirect 这个是可以的。那个是可以的。但我会讲说，为什么你就紧张吧？因为我觉得紧张这个还蛮自然的，就大家都会紧张。那老实说，我看过那种 storytelling 的比赛啊，去过蛮多，就在线上也看了一些。我发现很多真的很会讲故事的人，他看起来很紧张。
真的？
他的故事的力量反而不是来自于他的 performance， 有多么的 refine like。I don't know how you say in Chinese, like 就已经经过很多千锤百炼，然后他已经达到一个每一个 movement 都是 control movement 的，你知道完全可以控制自己的表现，那种你反而会觉得太不自然了。反而是那些真的很紧张的人，然后他们在讲过去发生的一段事，然后他们的也有点在某一些地方也有点断断续续这样，因为他们还在整理自己的情绪，那个是反而是最自然是最好的，所以不要担心自己很紧张。如果用故事来让自己不要那么紧张的话，我发现有一个还不错啦，就是去回想一些你自己成功的故事，或者你克服一些挑战的故事，因为你去回想它，然后你再把那个故事跑一遍的时候，你就会发现你比自己想象的坚强。
So you're your own hero.
Yeah, so the story is almost like a way to hypnotize yourself. But then something that you can do not for you, it's not for you, it's for the audience, is if you draw your story out as a curve, right? So when it goes up, it means like success, or it means you feel happier, like however you define it. And when it goes down, it means something bad happens. You draw it out as a curve.And if you find that your curve like stays high or stays low for a long time, meaning it's flat, there's no up and down, that's a time to watch out. Because that may be a moment where your story just becomes 流水账. It's just a series of events and it's kind of just flat.
It's just back to that shopping list, right?
Okay.
There you go. Yeah, exactly. Okay. So draw it out and make sure that it doesn't stay flat, either high or low for a long time.
所以真的回去把这个故事可以把它画出来 visualize, actually 把它画出来才自己可以看得到他们那个高低起伏，对不对？
没错。
Well, great. Thank you for joining us today, sharing your storytelling expertise. And we'll link a few resources in the show notes for people who are more interested in storytelling.
Thanks for having me. It's been fun.
Yeah.
Thank
Talk to you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.
如果你喜欢我们的 podcast， 欢迎来追踪我们的主管英文 Executive Plus 的 Facebook。那也可以写信到我们的信箱 yourcareerplus@gmail.com。